We decided to enter this mystery cave. Part 1.
Nursing student Patricia Meehan gets into a car accident. She was driving on the wrong side of the road when she collided with another car. The woman driving the car she hit described Patricia as motionless and silent, saying Patricia seemed to look right through her. Patricia suddenly makes a run for it and jumps over a fence. She then turns to stare silently at the accident scene a while before running into the woods. Since then, there have been over 5,000 sightings of her reported, but Patricia has never been found.
A prisoner and a prison guard in Alabama just escaped together, leaving many to wonder if it was planned or if she was kidnapped. So last Friday, Casey White and Vicky White disappeared from an Alabama jail. Vicky was bringing Casey to a courthouse for a routine mental health check, but they have not been seen since. For reference, Casey was actually in jail for a crime spree he committed in 2015, and while he was in jail, he also confessed to the murder of a 58-year-old woman, also in 2015. So there's actually reason to believe that the two were in a relationship at the time of the disappearance. Vicky was giving Casey preferential treatment in the prison and also may have had him specifically transferred to her prison so they could be together. Vicky also was set to retire the day of the disappearance and had just sold her house for way under market value. Casey, on the other hand, claimed that if he ever got out of prison, he would kill his ex-girlfriend and his ex-girlfriend's sister, and now he has access to Vicky's weapons. Personally, I think that Casey got Vicky to fall in love with him so that she would help him escape. And he feels really dangerous, so hopefully both of them are found within the next couple days.
This is Kyron Horman, and in 2010, at just 7 years old, he disappeared from his elementary school after attending a science fair. Kyron was born on September 9th, 2002 in Portland, Oregon. Before Kyron was born, his parents got divorced, and he was in joint custody of his parents until his mother, Desiree, was diagnosed with kidney failure. In 2007, Kyron's father, Kane, married Terry Moulton, and Terry became Kyron's stepmother. And in 2010, 7-year-old Kyron was attending Skyline Elementary School, which was near Forest Park, Oregon. June 4th, 2010 was Science Fair Day at Kyron's school, and he was brought to school by his stepmother, Terry, who stayed with him during the science fair. Terry stated that she left the school around 8:45 a.m. and that she last saw Kyron walking down the hall to his first class. However, he was not seen in that first class and was marked absent. Terry said that after she left the school, she was running errands, going to 2 different Fred Meyer's grocery stores until 10:10 a.m. And then she said between then and 11:39 a.m., she was driving her toddler daughter around town, trying to use the motion of the car to soothe her daughter's earache. After that, Terry went to the gym until 12:40 p.m., and by 1:21 p.m., Terry had arrived home and posted photos of Kyron at the science fair on her Facebook page. At 3:30 p.m., Terry and Kane walked with their daughter to the bus stop to pick Kyron up. But when they got there, the bus driver told them that Kyron had not boarded the bus and to call the school about his whereabouts. But when Terry did so, she was informed that Kyron, as far as the school knew, had been absent all day and had not been seen at the school since the science fair that morning. The secretary of the school then called 911. And after it was realized and reported that Kyron was missing, searches began. The initial search mainly focused in about a 2-mile radius around Skyline Elementary School, along with the Sauvie Island Bridge and Sauvie Island, which was about 6 miles away. Police never disclosed why they were searching there, but they obviously had some reason to. The search for Kyron spanned over 10 days and was the largest in Oregon history. It included over 1,300 searchers looking in Oregon, Washington, and California, but no sign of Kyron was found. A lot of suspicion was placed on Kyron's stepmother, Terry, because she had been the last person to see him that day. And then not long after Kyron disappeared, Terry was being investigated for potentially paying somebody to kill her husband. And that's where
I said I was going to avoid child cases for a little bit because I needed a break, but here we are. This Sweet Baby Angels case has been requested more times than I can count. It's probably my second highest. On July 10th, 2015, Dior Coons, age 2, had disappeared while on a camping trip. He was at Timber Creek Campground with his mother, Jessica Mitchell, his dad, Vernal Coons, his great-grandpa, Robert Walton, aka Bob, it was Jessica's grandpa, and Bob's friend, Isaac Raymond. Family had said that this camping trip was a very last-minute decision that they all went on. And on the day he disappeared, his parents had went down to a lake or creek to go fishing and said they had called back to the great-grandpa that they were going to be gone for a bit to keep an eye on Dior. Bob had stated that he had not heard them, so he assumed he went with them. Also at this time, Isaac had went down to a separate creek and had been fishing before they even left. 30 minutes later, they discovered that Dior was missing. Jessica had called 911 and she reported that her son was missing. They had been worried that he had either been taken by an animal or kidnapped. Authorities came in and extensive searches, including canine units, came in, and what they found really weird was there was no evidence that he was ever there. They had said he was wearing a camo jacket, some pajama-type pants, and some boots that were a little bit too big for him. Sheriff Department had ruled out that a wild animal had taken him because they thought that maybe his boots would have fell off or there would have been some kind of evidence if he had been attacked. The prior sheriff that was on this at first also does not think that there was any kind of kidnapping or anything because the campground they were at was extremely remote, so someone would have seen him, meaning the party they were in, or at the very least have heard a car. Lynn Bowerman, the prior sheriff, had thought they were sus as fuck and had this to say: I believe his parents are hiding something. There's no doubt in my mind. I've given them every opportunity to explain if it was an accident of some kind, and they haven't. Has to be a homicide.
I was busy thinking about
happened to Dr. Sneha Phillip. On September 10th, 2001, the day before 9/11, Dr. Sneha Phillip went missing. The big question of the story is, what happened to her? Did she die 9/11, or did something happen to her that no one else knows about? This is one of the most mysterious cases I've come across in a long time, so let's get into it. So Sneha Phillip met her husband Ron Lieberman when they were both attending Chicago Medical School. They got married and couples matched at 2 different programs in New York City. Ron went into emergency medicine and she went into internal medicine. They moved to Battery Park City, which is right next to the World Trade Center. Their apartment was only a third of a mile or half a kilometer away from the original Twin Towers. So on the outside looking in, they're living the dream. They moved to New York, they're a new power couple, and it's important to always remind yourself that things aren't always as they seem. Sneha had a lot of difficulties going on in her life right up to her disappearance, which I empathize with, but it does kind of complicate the story. We'll get into it. So on the day before 9/11, it was September 10th, 2001, Sneha had off from work and her husband went up to the Bronx where he worked to do emergency medicine. When Ron left to work that morning, that was the last time he'd ever see Sneha ever again. And again, this is the day before 9/11. On that day, she did have a 2-hour conversation with her mom, discussing many different topics, and one of them was that she was planning on going to the restaurant at the top of the World Trade Center. She was planning on going with a friend who was getting married, but she didn't specify when. At 4 p.m. on the 10th, she went to a dry cleaner's and then afterwards went to a Century 21 where she bought a dress, pantyhose, and lingerie. She also went to a store next door to buy 3 pairs of shoes, and then this was the last confirmed records of her presence. That night, Sneha's husband Ron came home after working and realized that Sneha wasn't there. When Ron saw that she wasn't there, he assumed that she was out partying or that she was out with maybe her brother or cousin staying the night, which is also something that she had done before. Going into some of the difficulties that Sneha was experiencing in her life, she did typically go to gay and lesbian clubs and was seen many times going home with women, and police found this in their investigation later, that she would stay the night with them. Now, she would deny having romantic relationships with them, although many were unsure if she was contemplating her sexuality. So going back to the story, Ron came home, didn't see her, went to sleep, and then at 6:30 a.m. he woke up and went to work. This was on September 11th. At 8:45, the world changed, of course, and an entire series of events unfolded. Ron became very worried about his wife because he didn't see her that night, and so he got in an ambulance and went all the way from the Bronx to where they were in Lower Manhattan, and it took 6 hours. It took a long time to get home because there were a lot of people trying to flee Manhattan. When he got home, he was crying out all over the place for his wife, but he still had no idea where she was, and because he was in scrubs, he was able to get past police barricades and into where his apartment was. Now, the doors to his apartment were locked and the electricity was out, so he couldn't get in. And so Ron decided to find a friend nearby, stay the night with them, and then go back in the morning. When he was able to get back into his apartment, there was dust everywhere because one of the windows were left open. There were no human footprints in the dust, and Sneha left all of her belongings except for a credit card, which is the one that she used at the Century 21 to buy clothing. And where it starts to get a little confusing is that no one claims that they saw Sneha on the night of the 10th. So family, friends, anyone that knew her, no one said, oh, she stayed the night with me. It was unconfirmed where her location was. And then what also makes the story a little confusing is that Sneha was definitely going through a very hard time in her life. After Sneha started residency, she was let go from 2 jobs in a row due allegedly to drinking issues as well as chronic tardiness, and she was let go from her 2nd job right before 9/11. So that in itself is very hard to go through. And then on top of that, there was also many nights that I said she was out at lesbian and gay bars. Many people didn't know if she was questioning her sexuality. And then she also unfortunately had a minor run-in with the law, and I don't know, this story is a little frustrating, but she apparently was groped by a coworker when she was at a bar, and then she reported to the police, but the police, after looking into it, didn't believe her or somehow found evidence that she made it up per what they think, and then they charged Sneha instead for making the false claim. So she was charged with 3rd degree of falsely reporting an incident, which is a misdemeanor in New York. And then they told her, hey, if you recant your statements, we'll take it off your record. She said, no, I'm not going to do that. And then they took her to jail for a night. So that is very upsetting. And many people started believing that she did die saving people in 9/11. People thought she lived close by, she's a doctor, she wanted to help, and then the towers collapsed. And then Sneha's brother John made up a statement to police that while the 9/11 attacks were going on, he was on the phone with Sneha and she told him, hey, I need to go take care of people, because she was seeing what was happening, and given that she's a doctor, she was basically acting as a hero. While Sneha may have been helping people at the scene, she never talked to him on the phone. So John, the brother, never actually had this conversation, and he did admit to police later that he made it up and it wasn't true. John, Sneha's brother, also claimed that Sneha slept with his girlfriend. So again, the brother is saying that his sister slept with his girlfriend. John said that he walked in on them and broke them up. I don't know how true that is, given that he made up one statement, but that is what he claimed. But throughout time, she was taken on and off the official list of 9/11 victims. One element to this was that her remains were never identified at the World Trade Center after they cleared up the area, but there were also hundreds of people who were in the same boat. And then the fact that she went missing the night before and was having so many difficulties in her life added to the confusion. She was having trouble keeping jobs. She had a minor run-in with the law, substance issues, potentially struggling with her sexuality, which again is not confirmed. Now, in the police investigation at 4 a.m. on the 11th, so right before the 9/11 attacks, there was a call that was made from Ron's cell phone to the home phone. Ron told authorities that he didn't remember making that call, but he might have been checking his messages when he was like half asleep in the middle of the night. So at first, she was believed to be a 9/11 victim, but then they took her off the official list. They said that because she was last seen on the 10th, she wasn't associated with the attacks. Now, there were still many people who believed that she was a 9/11 victim. Her husband Ron tried to make a claim in something called the 9/11 Victims Compensation Fund. And something that a lot of people don't know is that a lot of the victims from 9/11 had family members who got paid millions. Given that Sneha was a young doctor, her payout would have been estimated to be around $3 to $4 million, but the committee of the compensation fund denied it. Years later, the topic was brought back up to a board committee where they reviewed Sneha's case and then voted, and they decided to add her back onto the official list of 9/11 victims. But because this happened years later, after that compensation fund was closed, Ron was never able to receive any money from the victims' compensation. Now, the big question is, what happened to Sneha? Did she truly die in 9/11? Was she murdered after a night out? Did she end her own life? Did she run away to start a new life? Did her family have something to do with this? Or was it simply a tragedy? On one hand, 9/11 would be a huge distraction for someone to try to get away with murder or to run away and start a new life. But on the other, Sneha did mention that she wanted to go see a friend and eat at the top of the World Trade Center at some point to her mom when she was on the phone the day before on September 10th. They also lived really close to the World Trade Centers. She easily could have been out there trying to help people, doing CPR. Many people didn't realize that the buildings were going to fall. Personally, I think that her death most likely was associated with the Twin Towers, but at the same time, I have no idea. To this day, it is still a mystery. Feel free to let me know what you think.